And it's another Friday. And what does that mean? It's time for another episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network with the CVC Success Group team members here. And we do this every Friday if possible. Sometimes due to travel or other commitments, we're not able to do it. But hey, we're here with you again today. And the next few weeks don't really have any Fridays we won't be able to do it, except one Friday in June. I will be doing a training on that Friday for a client, so I won't be able to be here. So here's our subject matter for today. I want you to think about it for a minute. What if everybody on your team had the mindset of an owner? Had the mindset of an owner. And what do I mean by that? What is the owner's mindset? It's a way of thinking where the person takes full responsibility, initiative, and long term perspective, just like an owner or entrepreneur would, even if they're not the actual owner of the business. It's about going beyond just doing your job and thinking about what's best for the whole business, team, or project. It means they have accountability. They own the outcome, not just the tasks. They take responsibility for wins and for losses. They take the blame. They don't wait to be told what to do. They anticipate the needs and they take initiative. They think about how the work impacts the larger goal, the strategy, and the bottom line of the business. They're resourceful. They find solutions instead of getting stuck in problems or roadblocks. And they treat the company's money, time, and resources as if they were their own. As you listen to that, what do you think? Do you think people of this caliber can take the company to an entirely new level? Because when you look at it, how many people does that actually describe that are out there in the work world? How many does it describe? Or how many don't look at the company as the owner looks at it? And what does this do? It builds chaos, it builds frustration, it builds resentment, and eventually it ends up in somebody that's usually got to be terminated or they quit and figure out there's a greener pasture somewhere else they need to go to. So, how do we do this? How do we impart this? And where did this come up? This is actually part of a seminar I've been producing for the last few months, and I use it in conjunction with the SWAT meeting, where we're actually mixing the SWOT ideas, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we're trying to get everybody thinking with the mindset of the owner. So, Cheryl, you're a deep thinker. You understand people's psychology. You're that disc assessor that understands what people are thinking, what their true personalities are. As I talk about the owner's mindset, what comes to light to you, and how do we get this mindset amongst our workers?
Well, the one thing I think the first thing is going to have to be honesty within the company and a huge amount of communication. We can't just expect people to be that way. That we wish it were, but it's hard to impart it on a employee. A lot of they're there to work and get a paycheck. They don't see the day to day things that happen and what holds it together. They're there for a paycheck. You may have a general manager or a office manager or something that sees all this going on, but as a rule, the technicians are not that inert about it. But that's something, you're right. It needs to be in a company for it to move on and grow. Or if they don't get that mindset, they're just going to always be I'm going to say, lower employee. They might be the top paying one, but they're not the one that's holding the company up. And how do you do it? Um, I would say it's a lot of pressure, a lot of training. I think we need to train all of our employees in what I would call leadership training to a point where they can see what it takes to make a leader and give them a chance to make some decisions. And a lot of times we see those decisions are wrong, but if they don't have some say so in the company, I don't think you're ever going to have what you want.
Yeah, and you're dead on the money. Like I said, I did two of these this week. Did two of them this week. One on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. And one of the participants in one of the meetings said something. He said, Jerry, you know, one of the problems, the only time we sit down together as a group is when you're here. When you're here. So part of what we came out of this, that they're going to start having a monthly meeting of everybody in the company sitting down, going over what's there, sharing the weaknesses, sharing the problems, coming up with joint solutions. One of the things Randy Pennington always shared with us was that if you want change in the company, you got to involve your people in the change. You just can't decree change. So, Josh, let's face it, you look at things a little bit harder than some people do. Would you agree? Sometimes, no offense, you can be real anal about this. It's got to be Josh's way. That's one of the things about Josh. No offense, but that's the way it is. So as I
Yeah.
talk about this owner's mindset, what's your thoughts on this?
The right personality type is really what it comes down to. Some guys are just always going to buck the system and they just need to go. And that's what it comes down to. They're going to constantly lose tools and break equipment. That's why if you still have an owner operator, the van seems to run a little bit longer if it's the owner operator operating the same van than the employee. I would say I don't know if it's part of a compensation plan for gross profit, that maybe you have a high level manager that's tied to that so that it works, correctly that way. But personalities, it's few and far between. And doing disc testing, I mean, I enjoyed that because I could see where my disc test showed I had a very high personal accountability, and then I was able to look at someone else's numbers and go, oh, their numbers the exact opposite of mine, and it was dead on the nails because they never did anything wrong.
Yeah. So let me dig a little deeper into this, what the ownership mindset is. This is a person who is always looking for ways to optimize, grow, and get better, not just for themselves, but for the whole operation. They also play an active role in the ownership of the culture in the team. They contribute to a positive and productive environment because culture drives performance also. It actually brings up a comment I heard a client tell me about one employee telling another one, hey, this guy did a great job this week, but instead of saying that, he had a phenomenal sales day one day, phenomenal in the field. And when he came in at the end of the day, another guy says, hey, that's okay, but you still got a long way to go to catch up with me. That ain't the way you drive. That's not the type of person that's got the right attitude to build the culture. So, Cheryl, how do we recognize this in a person like what Josh is talking about in the interview process where you get involved?
Well, I've got some questions that's tacked in that direction. The problem is, in an interview, people are at their best, for lack of a better word. And what they would do in front of me and what they actually do sometimes a little different. But I'm gradually, every time I turn around, I'm retweaking my questions because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a mini lead or a mini me, as far if I were the owner, because that's what it's going to take. But how do you instill it? Like Josh said, you have to work at it. But yeah, it's the personality. It's a person that wants to grow in the company. That's one question in a hiring process I want to hear. I want to grow within the company. Those are the people that know the way they're going to grow is only if the company's going to grow. So I kind of put them into the person that I'm definitely going to send to my client, because they are not just they're looking at themselves. Yes, they want their bottom line to grow, but they want to grow within the company. And that's the mindset I think you have to have. If you're not willing to grow, then you're not going to to look at it. And you just have to watch people. The thing about it, most employers, they have employees that start out that way, but if they don't hold them accountable, they kind of lose it and backtrack.
Got you covered. So, could I ask you? Let's give some people some gold nuggets today. What's some of the questions you would ask a prospect to tell you if they're this kind of person?
I'm usually asking about the goals. Do you have any goals? If they don't have any, they're not searching for better acts in themselves. I don't care what their goals are. I just like to know that they have something they're searching for. I also, there's two questions I like. I always ask them to tell me something that they succeeded in, something they're proud of. That I've got to know that something resonates within a body, that they succeeded at something, and you can see in their face that they're proud. It's not just a story. But I also asked them something they failed at. And you would be amazed at the number of people that quote have never failed. But I don't care what the failure is. I don't care anything except what they learned from it. If I don't get that, what they learned from it, then again, they're not going to succeed in a business, because if they have a problem, they're going to pass it off to somebody else. They're not going to learn. Those are just a couple, and each one's different, because mine's a little different from other interviews, because I'm playing against the last answer the person gave me as to which direction I want to take them.
Okay, got you. So, Josh, anything else you would add to this discussion?
No, I'm going to ask Cheryl a follow-up question. How much of a red flag is it if someone says they've never failed? Are they done at that point?
They're done. I'll ask them again. I do give second chances. I will usually ask, so you mean you've never failed in anything? You have always been 100% perfect. If that answer is, I'm 100% perfect, and the whole resume and every other answer he gave does not lead to that, then I know that he's got an attitude that's not going to work into a culture.
No, I don't know anybody that operates that way that actually improves in life.
That's it.
My list of failures is plentiful and longer than my arm.
Right. And again, it goes down desperation hiring, where people are hiring because they're just desperate for a human body. They want somebody that can walk and talk and read and write, hopefully. Don't know if they can use a tape measure, all those kind of things. Or to quote Josh, hey, I hope they can just know which end of the hammer to hold. That's a Josh Kelly quote that I keep with me right there. But in order to build this team with the owner's mindset, I think you got to communicate openly with your people. I think your people have got to know, what does a lead cost? What's it costing us to make the phone ring? Because I've seen some people just floored when we actually share that with the company. This is news to them. We've got to share what the cost of doing business is. Just this week, one of my clients had tremendous increases in both their general liability and in their vehicle insurance. This is a challenge to the business. I mean, Josh, if you were in business and found out your insurance was going up 50%, would that be disheartening if you were running a large business?
Oh, that's a big cost, because how do you figure out how you're going to pay for that?
That's it. You got to figure out how to pay for it. You're involved going more. Today, leads are costing us more. We're dealing with home services where leads are down and more people are competing for the leads. In some forms of home service, we're seeing private equity coming in. They can dump piles of money to outspend you in the marketplace to attract the leads. But again, it gets down. That's why I think that SWAT meetings are a definite benefit for any company to have with their employees. We suggest them to be done annually, do quite a few of them, and it really opens up the communication level. And actually, we see a definite change in the attitudes when we come out of this, because we're sharing with them and we're taking their input. But I think the biggest thing comes out, we're letting them speak what their frustrations are. What do they see as the weaknesses of the company? So those are my thoughts. Have communication, set up swap meetings. If you need help with this, guys, I do a pile of them. Just get in touch with me. My email address is right there on the screen. Be glad to help you out. Also comes down to have the right systems in place in your business. That's what Josh does. Comes in with having the right people. That's what Cheryl does, locating people to add to your teams. So, Josh, before I kick out of here today, anything you'd add to this?
No, I think what Cheryl said was great about attitude, and disc testing is probably the two biggest indicators if they're going to take accountability for their actions.
Yeah, but let's add this. The disc testing is critical, but a debriefing on what the results show, because you get a 90-page report, unless somebody debriefs you on it, you really don't understand. Would that be true, Cheryl?
Yeah, I have a lot of people that won't do it, and they label themselves as a C or whatever, and they feel like they can't get out of it. But without a debriefing, you don't really understand. Had I not been debriefed when I took mine, I would have walked away from ever trying to teach this particular thing, because being a high D, I didn't particularly like being that dominant, but I was, so I've had to work with it. But with what they told me, and they helped me work through it, the things you are what people see. That's what the disc is going to show. People see you for what your disc is. So you need to get a debriefing to understand exactly what people are looking at. That's my opinion.
Okay. Well, anything you would add to this topic before we sign out this week?
Communicate. If you do nothing else today, start communicating with your team.
Start communicating with your team. That's fantastic. That's a good one right there. Everybody needs to take a really hard look at that particular thing, where you're going, what you're doing. Be open with your people. Meet with them. Communicate with them. Let them know what the challenges are out there that you're facing in this business. Make them fully aware of it. So anyway, appreciate you joining us this week. Go ahead and tell you a little bit about next week. Josh and Cheryl don't know this yet, but I have a guest lined up for next week, and his name is Philip Stoller. He is the president of Saver Systems, and in a previous life, what he did, he was a coach consultant at Aileron. So we're going to have Philip with us next week, and we're going to be talking about leadership. He's been around a lot of people in this industry, and he hopefully is going to share some ideas. So tune in for us next week, 12 noon Eastern time, when we welcome Philip as our interview that week. And with that, we're going to end this broadcast. We appreciate you joining us as always. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure. And with that, we'll see you next week on our next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Have a fantastic weekend. Appreciate you tuning in as always.